Hey, what is going on, YouTube? It's Nile and Blevins of the Pop XP, and we have a very special episode tonight. We're going to be chatting with the great, legendary Jim Valentino, and we're going to bring him on to set the record straight. He had posted a great article that he wrote up about an event that happened about a year ago, and we're bringing him on to let the people know what's going on. You know what I mean, Blevins?
I know exactly what you mean, man. I mean, so many people trying to take credit for other people's work, and so many people trying to do these different things to make themselves seem better than maybe they really are. But I tell you what, man, one thing you definitely cannot take away from this guy is he is one of the founders of one of the greatest publishing companies that revolutionized comic books to how we have them today.
Oh, I agree. I agree. True inspiration to so many of us, the creators, in the past, present, way beyond into the future, has brought so many amazing IPs to the pages. Some of these IPs that we've seen, had great success beyond comic books, from television, video games, movies. I mean, he has an eye for talent. He has an eye for the creativity, the creative process. So I think without further ado, my friend, Mr. Blevins, let's get Mr. Jim Valentino on the screen.
That's right.
Hey, Jim.
How you doing?
We're doing well. Welcome back to the channel. We're happy to have you.
Thanks. Nice to be
here. Yeah, and we're
nice.
Glad. and we're glad that you're feeling better and on the mend, which is great.
Yeah, me too. Let me tell you, it got kind of hairy there for a while.
Yes. So you had an experience. We had a bit of a health experience go on, which you're on the mend from, which we're all happy about, and a lot of people are posting such great positive vibes for you and everything of that nature. And so this experience, I think, and correct if I'm wrong, kind of triggered you to react to something that you kind of held on to for about a year.
Well, more than a year. A year ago, the K-Fab guys said just an offhanded comment, when they repeated Eric Larson's, and I'm not trying to fight with anybody, but they repeated Eric Larson's "Riding the Ship," and it struck me because, and I do it myself, where I'll post something that somebody supposedly said and they didn't say it, and I was too lazy to look it up. So I'm not going to, jab them for that. It was an offhand comment, but I did get in touch with them after they said it and said, that's bullshit. And they said, well, why don't you come on and tell us your side of the story? And I said, I can't. I just can't. As weird as it may seem from interviews like this, I really don't like calling attention to myself. And I really don't like to list whatever meager accomplishments I've had. And those kind of things just bother me. It isn't why I do what I do. And so I haven't been able to set the record straight just because of the way that I am about things. And after this illness, for those who don't know, I was hospitalized for quite a while, and things were really dicey. I had pneumonia on top of an already existing respiratory problem, and it's not a good combination. So it's taken me the last month to get to here, where I'm recovering, not 100%, but I am recovering. So anyways, after the hospital stay, I just felt I had to write it down. And it took a while, and I had help with people helping me edit out all the nasty barbs. I wanted just to try to stay to the facts as much as possible. And I wanted to say, look, this is the facts. This is what happened during my tenure. I don't believe that I produced shitty books. I believe that I brought in a lot of incredible creators, and I had a plan. And I followed that plan, and I give Eric Stevenson a hell of a lot of credit for following through.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you don't mind, what I would like to dive in, because with the article that you wrote, expressing, your thoughts on this now, and basically kind of wanting to clear the air of what you've done and what you've accomplished, which aren't meager, Jim. They're not meager at all. I mean, these what you've brought to the table has, I mean, it's been exponential for some people. It's life for them with these IPs that we're able to bring out. So it's 1999. You inherit this role, right, as publisher for Image. But in your mind, to you, it's you kind of felt it was like a wasteland. Like maybe it's kind of degraded down a bit from what the image was that you guys started.
Um, I had two conversations. The first was with Todd, and he said that Larry was coming to work for him, but he had no short list about who to replace him. And I said, I will.
Mhm.
And Larry called me up, and Larry said that he didn't know what to do with the brand. And I said, well, I know what to do. And I had a plan immediately, right from the start. So I kind of hit the ground running.
Yeah, and so was this something you were watching? Because obviously you're a part of it. You're a founder of Image, right? You have another gentleman who's acting as publisher, running everything on that end of it. You're seeing, as I think you stated, there was semi-professional books, swimsuit issues, misogynistic titillation comics, and as you're watching this, are you thinking, "Man, we can do better," and already getting this plan in your head of how we can improve our company?
I didn't get a plan in my head, but I thought, yeah, this is not good. This
Mhm.
this is not. Image deserves better than this, and that was really the way that I felt about it. I thought I thought, see, I thought what we did was monumental, and if you read the Image timeline that I wrote last year, I was the guy who saved everything. I was the guy that kept track of everything because I thought what we were doing was historic. Now, why? The reason is I knew a lot of the golden age guys. I knew Kirby. I knew Murphy Anderson. I knew Jerry Siegel. I knew a lot of these guys. And they all regretted the fact that they didn't keep track of anything. They truly regretted it.
Mhm.
I wasn't going to do that. I wasn't, so I looked at this stuff and I just shook my head. It's like, and these misogynistic books, hey guys, girls got boobs. Film at 11, wow.
Yeah.
And these guys were building, books on it, and the books were profitable.
Do you
And
think that was just carryover? That was just an idea that they had from working at Marvel? Because Marvel was all about the swimsuit issues and stuff like that.
Well, I think the Bad Girl era
in
really
Marvel,
pushed that,
Bad,
right?
yeah,
a lot of these guys who never worked at Marvel, but I think it was part of the zeitgeist of that particular era,
Mhm.
right? So when I cut these books, people were not real thrilled with me, but ah, who cares? But this book is making money. I don't care. It's a piece of shit. We're
Yeah.
getting rid of it. It's not. It's tarnishing our company, tarnishing our eye. And the real problem was, and you could see it from the outside. Professional people were just giving us a wide berth. Now, when I came on, Larry Martyr had already started to deal with the guerrilla guys.
Mhm.
I knew guerrilla would fail, and I could tell you why, but that's a whole other story. But guerrilla meant Kurt Busiek, Mark Waid, George Perez, Stuart Immonen, Carl Kiesel, just all these great guys, great talents, great names. I knew most of them. And I figured this is what we need, um, they're not gonna last, but they're gonna give me what I need right now, which is some star power
Mhm.
to help start things going. So Larry started that, but I kind of brought it home.
Okay. So with the plan that you had to improve the vision that you saw for Image. I know you kind of explained some of it in bits and pieces. How was your target? Like, how was your target action plan to get this moving? Was it bring in stars?
5 years,
Yep.
5 years to build straight from the ground up. I felt that if you start bringing in good books, and it was tough. I mean, we had a hell of a time trying to fill in, the the talent, because people didn't want to come. They really didn't want to. Books at Image weren't selling. Image was very tainted at the time.
Mhm.
And it's a slow build. I mean, I didn't target, that guy, no. But I'll give you a great example. I was at Chicago when they had the convention in Rosemont, okay? And there was a convention center, and across the street from the convention center was a Hyatt hotel or something like that. And there was this elevator going from the ground floor to the mezzanine. There was this big guy with long blonde hair with his back turned, right? And I go up the escalator and he looks at me, "Oh, Jim Valentino." And I go, "Yeah, who are you?" He goes, "Joseph Michael Linsner." And I go, "Hey, dude, anytime you want to come over, please do." And he goes, "Are you kidding?" No, no, I'm not kidding. Chance encounters like that, talking with some people who still, and we talked with one guy, and he didn't want to come over because he thought Robert Kirkman was a loser and was going to bring the company down. I was like, okay.
So did it take any persuading though? Were there other creators where you really had to kind of sell them to get them over into Image?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Sure. As a matter of fact, before the bloodless coup, I was talking to a very major creator and had been talking to him for about a year or more and was about to bring him over, him and his entire catalog. It would have been a huge, huge boom for Image.
So you did also a lot more though there at Image. You obviously brought the IPs in, right? You're bringing in creators, you're bringing their IPs, and you're working on their books. But it sounds like you also, and I've heard this and read this and other things. You almost did a lot of mentoring as well with these creators to really kind of polish some of their work.
Some. I mean, the younger ones, the more inexperienced ones, yeah. I helped them, or tried to help them, mostly giving them business advice. This is what you need to do, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, mostly that.
Yeah. Now, would you consider yourself a tough publisher at the time?
At the time,
Yeah.
oh, I don't know. I don't think of myself in those kind of terms.
No.
I would never. It wasn't about me. It was about Image. And it was about the creators that were coming into Image and the responsibility I felt towards them and the responsibility I felt towards the company. And that's what it was about. If you look back over my career, I'm usually the guy standing in back. I'm never the guy out in front.
Mhm.
That's Todd and Robert and Rob. They love the spotlight, but some people just don't.
So let me try rephrasing it a bit this way. Were you more particular about what you were going to put in the pages on the Image brand with your vision of making this company, better than getting it out of the red, bringing it into the black?
I wanted, and I had basically one criteria. I wanted books that were interesting, that were well drawn and well written. Genre didn't matter. I'm kind of known as an indie guy, and I kind of am. But at the same time, I love superheroes. I mean, to me, there's no difference whatsoever. So it was about quality books. Now, I published some books that I would never read. They weren't for me.
Mhm.
But I felt they had an audience. So that was part of it, is the book of professional caliber I had to perceive an audience for them, and the people that I was working with couldn't be assholes. And that was, the 3 basic criteria.
Well, it makes sense to me. It makes sense to me of what you were putting together. It makes sense to me that you're steering the ship in the right direction, and bringing in stuff. Because again, the IPs that you took chances on became very successful,
Yeah.
in what they did,
No
and
doubt.
you had to have seen, obviously that there was something here. Because otherwise, why would you put it in the pages, especially branding it with the Image Publishing name?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that was part of it. It may not be for me, but there's something there. And there were guys who struggled to find the right vehicle. Okay. And what I mean by that, I'll give you 2 examples. One of them is Robert Kirkman. He had a lot of very unsuccessful books, and he kept at it. He would not say die. That didn't work. Okay, try this. And he was working 2 jobs to pay his artists to keep the books going. Okay. That's tenacity. That I respect. So when he came up with The Walking Dead, he pitched it at first as Dawn of the Dead. And I said, no, I can't do that. And then it was Planet of the Dead, or Planet of the Zombies. And I was like, oh, that's just awful. Then he came up with The Walking Dead. Boom, that's it.
Nailed it.
Yeah, it just sings, But I told him, and it was true at the time, and I think it's still true. Zombie books don't sell. So I asked him for a hook. Give me a hook. Give me something. Tell me something that sets this book apart. What he should have said to me, it's a struggle of a man and his son living through this horrible world. And I would have said, go. That's all he had to say. Instead, he came up with this bit about aliens, and Eric Stephen called him up, I think after the 4th issue, and said, where's the aliens? There's no aliens. So there's that. Invincible was the same way. The original was called Bulletproof. And it was a hell of a lot like Superboy at the time, right? The Carl Kiesel Superboy. And I just didn't like the name Bulletproof. I said, give me something else. He goes, Invincible. Boom.
Yeah.
Nailed it. It's just a powerful name. The other one was Curtis Weeb. He did several books, just didn't take off, just couldn't find his footing anywhere. And then he hit on Rat Queens, and everything came together. So it happens, and I did that with quite a few people where if they were working hard to get something together, I wanted to help. I wanted to get them there. My whole thing, if you look at the early days of Image, I gave my back covers to independent creators and independent books. So I gave them to things like Beanworld and Bone and Understanding Comics and things that may be iconic today, but they sure weren't then, And when I started publishing for the first time, I published mostly black and white independent style books. So I published people like Scott Morse and Michael Avon Oming and, a few other people like Bill Loeb's, my old friend. And a bunch of others, but these were independent, Xander Cannon. These were independent comics, no 2 ways around it. I felt that my time at Image, I could lift, hopefully, other people up and give them some attention and maybe boost their careers, which was the hope.
Yeah. And what you did. You did. And
Absolutely.
100%. Look where some of these creators are now. Invincible's on season 2 on Amazon, and it's doing great on there. You've definitely you've lifted all the sails.
4
know?
spinoffs now. What's up?
Yeah, it's incredible what's gone there. And you've done all of that for the creators, right? I mean, that's a lot of time. That's a lot of dedication. That's what a good publisher does, right? It's about lifting up everyone that's within the company or working with the company or going through the company. But there's also another matter that you have to address, right? It's okay, we can make great books. We have to sell the books.
Right.
What other markets are out there? You were able to untap some markets that weren't being touched yet. Could you touch base on that a bit?
Yeah, what I saw was as a pie shrinks, you have to find more ways to cut the pie, more pieces of the pie, how it's going to work. So there was the book trade out there, bookstores. It took some doing, but I found a way to get us into bookstores. We even went with a different distributor one time who went, belly up, of course, leaving us, with not as much debt as some of the other publishers, but leaving us in the lurch. But it was a matter of trying, of getting out there, of exposing ourselves. And the same thing with the library market. Now, libraries buy books in onesies, twosies, and they're real particular. But it's another revenue stream. It's another way to sell books. And I felt at the time that was very, very important.
Mhm. And what you're telling us, I mean, it's incredible of what you've accomplished over at Image. If you don't mind me asking, if you're comfortable answering, what did you know that, you being removed as publisher was coming, or was it a total surprise to you?
It was a shock. It was a shock. It came about. I was having an awful hard time with the publishers, and admittedly, I am no day at the beach. And, let's be clear about that. One of the people who was working for me was complaining a little too much to Eric Larson, not thinking that Larson would take the bait, but there were other things going on with Top Cow and with Todd. So things were not great, okay, politically, but I did not expect that to happen. Who would? Larson was not qualified to be publisher. It was more about his ego, um, bad sales on Savage Dragon. And Eric's one of those people who believes I can do it better.
Mhm. Now, would that whole decision had to have been made by all the partners?
Yes.
Okay. Did that taint anything for you for a while?
Yeah.
Yeah.
To say the least. And of course, I was threatened at the time.
Mhm.
So did it taint anything? I think I went through a whole year where all I could see was red. I was just angry as hell.
How did you get yourself out of that?
I didn't feel I had any choice.
Mhm.
I had one of the things that was said to me was, "We can all get jobs at Marvel and DC. You can't."
Shit.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a knife to the back right there.
Yeah, that's
That's a
rough.
horrible statement.
Yeah,
Wow.
it was, and it hurt really bad. It's true, but it hurt, and it was unnecessary. So how did I get it? I just felt I didn't have a choice. I had no options. So go ahead.
I guess so reading your post, you said, hey, look, when you came in, like they were in the red, again, I loved the one comment, I righted the ship. I'm the one that did that. I'm the one that righted the ship. And you said that this coup came after 3 years of being in the black.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, where was the justification? You know what I'm saying? Like you're making money. Like there's obviously a trail.
Is going on, behind the scenes. There was a lot of things going on, and Eric was always liked a lot more by the partners than I was. I was the guy that they felt did not fit into Image, and took every opportunity to remind me of that. And when I took over as publisher, that really didn't change a whole lot. So it was a pretty much complete lack of respect.
Yeah. So when you said you would take this position as the publisher back in '99, were they with that attitude that you're kind of saying, were they kind of hesitant, like, yeah, no, let's think about this? Or did they say, yes, go, go for it?
They said go for it because they didn't see any other options. And I had,
Because none of them were going to step up.
huh?
None of them were going to do it, right?
No. And I had a plan, and I presented the plan to them. I said, this is what we're going to do, but I'm going to have to scorch the earth to do it. I'm going to get rid of all this shit. It's the only way that we can rebuild, replant. You got to till up the soil, put in the fertilizer, and bring in a whole new crop.
Mhm.
That's
That's what we had to do. There was no two ways around it.
Do you think you said there was a bunch of stuff going on behind the scenes, a bunch of this in people's ears and stuff like that kind of contributed to the coup happening? Like, do you think that, say, other than Eric, who had a direct voice in his attached to his ear that was complaining to him, do you think that the consensus group was just uneducated in what was going on? Do you think they were too far gone to actually see the real picture of what was going on, and they just made a gut check decision?
Yeah, I don't think they knew what was going on with the company. They certainly didn't know about the plans that we were having and stuff like that. They certainly didn't know. I mean, I had just brought in Matt Wagner, an old friend of mine.
Yeah.
Mage.
Yeah.
Age, yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of these things were built on relationships that I had built over the years. And with some people, they really didn't, where I didn't get along with that person. Luckily, I had Eric Stevenson there, who is much calmer than I am, and a much better memory than I have. And he could get along with some of these people that I didn't get along with.
Now being able to express your thoughts now, getting them out into social media and getting your voice out. I mean, do you feel a weight lifted off your shoulders?
A bit, yeah. I mean, yeah, kind of. I mean, it wasn't like it was, on me. It was more like I've got to address this. I don't want to die, and everybody thinks that what happened was the right thing. Maybe it was, okay. But here's the facts. Here's what I did. You decide, and then take a look at what happened afterwards. You decide. All I can say is afterwards, the aftermath is that Eric Stevenson really took up the baton.
Mhm.
He was kind of my co-publisher, and we would talk pretty much on an hourly basis, trying to make our plans and who we're going to talk to and what's going on and that kind of stuff. And I hope I taught him a lot. He says I did, but the one thing that I think I gave him was this idea that Image can do this. We can do this. We can do anything we want to do. We are a separate entity, completely different than Marvel and DC. And we can do this stuff.
Now, you're ousted as publisher, but you're still a partner.
Right.
So you still, I'm sure, have to, obviously see these guys, certain meetings going on. Was it hard to carry on? I know you, for that first year, you were feeling it, right?
Yeah.
It was intense. But having to continue with this company and being a partner, you still wanted to survive, you wanted to float and grow and get bigger. How was the working relationships moving on after that point?
Well, you have to understand the partners are pretty separate one from another.
Okay.
Even back then, we only saw each other once or twice a year. We'd run into one another at conventions. I never personally hung out with the partners. Okay.
So it wasn't like board meetings, like, all right, we got to meet every 2 months or anything like
Yeah,
that.
no, God, no.
Zoom calls where everybody's on
Well,
a Zoom
everyone's
call.
Zoom calls then, but
There's very little of that, and there always was very little of that. And not that we wouldn't have them, but still. I mean, I think we're gonna have a Zoom call next week, and I think that it's probably the first Zoom call we've had in maybe 4 or 5 years. It's like that's how far apart we are from one another. None of us hang out with each other, never have. We all have our own groups and our own people and that kind of stuff. So, seeing them and spending what, small time I had with them wasn't that big a deal. I mean, when you've been together for a really long time, water goes under the bridge, you know? Right now, because they're in my head a lot, I'm thinking of the Rolling Stones. They've been together for 60 years, and there have been times when they didn't talk to each other for 5 years at a stretch.
yeah.
So, same kind of thing, actually. It's pretty
Work is work.
Yeah, work is work, right?
Work
Now,
is
now
work.
for those that may be curious still, I mean, who are all the image partners now?
The image partners are Todd McFarlane, Mark Silvestri, Eric Larson, Robert Kirkman, Eric Stevenson, and myself.
So on a lighter note, I mean, you're still active in comics, you're still doing stuff. Is there anything that you'd like to talk about that you are currently working on or have working on with others that you're going to be getting out there?
Right now, I am working on the complete Von Bodie Dead Bone Erotica. So these are all the strips that he did in the mid 70s for Cavalier, a men's magazine. So these are completely politically incorrect for today, but they weren't created today. They were created in the 1970s. This is going to be another omnibus volume, probably at the end of the year. Then in the middle of the year, I'm working with Nick Marakovich on a brand new original graphic novel.
Oh, Nick is fantastic.
Yeah, he's incredible, and as you would expect, this is gorgeous, just absolutely incredible. So those are the two projects I'm working on right now. I think this is out this week or next week. I'm not really sure, but
here.
Yeah, can you see that?
Yep.
There we go.
Look, man,
Yes.
That's based on Shadowhawk #4.
Yeah, a little
Yep.
homage cover.
Yeah. So that's coming out. That's the last piece that I drew, and then there's this. This just came out.
Yes. Which I have to. I need to get a copy of that because I don't know, but if you notice behind me in my little studio, I've got my original one.
Yeah. This one's been re-edited, recolored.
And I gotta have that there too. Sorry.
Everything is in it. So I still, I just came out with, of course, with the Rat Queens omnibus, which is gigantic, and it's got everything in it. So I'm still working, and I still intend to work. And as I think I talked with you sometime last year, I did ran a bit with Marvel.
Yep.
And that fell to the wayside.
You would have thought with the success of the Dungeons and Dragons movie and all the stuff that's been going on with them, like that Rat Queens would have been a no-brainer as a property to pick up and turn into a series.
You would think, but a lot of times, they'll pick up a series and just absolutely destroy it. I mean, Neil Gaiman says it took almost 30 years to get Sandman on the screen correctly. I can tell you that the last time Normal Man was optioned, they told me their big idea was that Normal Man and Captain Everything were brothers. And I said, oh, twins. No, it's not twins. It's different. And normal man is angry because Captain Everything has all the powers. So he creates this machine and it takes away everyone's powers, and we're going to call it a power outage. And I just looked at them and said, "That's your idea?"
Yeah.
And they said, "Yeah, don't you think it's great?" And I went, "No." And I turned around and walked away from them, without saying anything at all.
The source material alone in that book would make I would love to see that on the screen. It's honestly, it's like perfect the way it is. I'm
Yeah,
sure they'd have to tweak it a little bit, but I
Well,
mean,
I would tweak it towards the movies.
yeah.
Although with Marvel movies lately, you don't have to. They're doing it to themselves.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would do it to the movies.
Man, like we were going to talk a little bit about the cartoonist kayfabe episode, the one where all this stuff happened, and I didn't know that you hadn't seen it.
I don't know anything about it, and I don't know what they did. I don't know anything about it.
Yeah, it was just an episode where they had him on, and he was talking about how he took over as publisher, and it was 3 years ago. The episode was 3 years ago, and he had made a comment that kind of threw me off, because I've heard over the years about how destructive mentally that Eric Larson is towards people that want to get a review of their portfolio. Like that he was very, very negative, very aggressive, and letting people know, like, hey, look, your stuff is trash. Like you're not going to make it.
Which no one will ever do.
I'm sorry.
That's Eric Larson's personality. Okay.
Like, in that talk, he said that that you were actually keeping people from coming in and doing that. Like they were like, oh well, if Jim Valentino's there, like I'll never see a book printed.
What he was talking about was I had turned down Ant 3 times. I thought it was misogynistic. I thought it was absolutely horrible book. But of course, Eric liked it because her face was covered, her body was covered, she had huge tits with hard nipples, no waist, a camel toe, and a butt crack. Perfect Eric Larson woman. To me, that's
all the marks, all the way down the line.
To me, that's disgusting.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I
mean, some of the stuff in Savage Dragon has been a little.
Oh yeah.
Well, man.
Again, that's Eric's taste. So yeah, he's right. I did bar some people from coming in, particularly Ant. Mm-hmm. And I was right. It is a piece of crap that should have never been published. But he wanted to publish it. It's his deal. That's fine with me. But that's nothing to. Now, and again, I said, as I said before, I'm no day at the beach by any means. I have a very short temper. I do not suffer fools at all, let alone gladly. I don't put up with them. Life's too short, and so am I. I'm not gonna let it happen. So yeah, I can be pretty harsh, and I can be pretty mean. But I would never, ever tell someone that their work is shit and they should go home and blah 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 and all the stuff.
Use it to wipe their butt with.
I think he watched Neil Adams do it. Neil Adams used to do it too.
Yeah.
Neil Adams was brutal with people.
Oh, he was notorious for it. I mean, the stories people tell.
Yeah, he was notorious for it. I mean, he did it to Frank Miller for probably a year until Frank finally won him over. If it was me, I would have seen the talent there. There's something there. This guy's got something. But that's the way some people do it. For me, when people came up to show their portfolios, which I always hated, I would recommend 3 books to them. And I just say, these are the books you need. You need The Complete Guide to Drawing from Life by George Bridgman. Mm-hmm. George Bridgman was the guy who taught Alex Raymond.
Yeah. Gordon.
I have his book right over there, actually.
Yeah, I
It's pretty advanced though, so you definitely have to have had either some art classes or something.
if they're really young and really new and don't have anything at all, I recommend the How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way,
Mhm.
because it breaks everything down very simply. And then Bridgman for more advanced. I recommend Understanding Comics because it explains the philosophy behind comics, and also Comics and Sequential Art by Will Eisner. You know, I had this kid. He must have been about 12 years old, and he came up with his stuff. And I told him, let me explain to you where you're going wrong. And he goes, Sergio Aragonés and Dick Giordano just told me the same thing. And I said, we didn't have a meeting about you. I said, do you respect them? He said, yes. And I said, then listen to them. So when I would get a critique from someone like Sergio Aragonés, I mean, I'd listened, it's like, okay, I can't listen to you because you know what you're talking about.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And that's the way to do it. It's constructive criticism, but it's also encouragement, right?
Right, exactly. Because you don't want to discourage them, because you never know.
Right.
You never know. That kid that came up to you with scribbles, in 5 years' time, he may be the next Jim Lee.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't know. And it's the same thing why I don't take credit for people's careers. They're the ones who did it, not me. If I was privileged enough to introduce them or to give them a leg up, then that's great. But I had nothing to do with their careers. They're the ones who did it.
Yeah.
And that's a truism.
Jim, tell us a little bit about Marvel and what you had going on last year.
C.B. Sobalski, who's, what is he, the editor-in-chief?
Editor-in-chief.
Yep.
Yeah. Whom I've known for, 7,000 years now. He got in touch with me and asked if I would consider doing a bit with the Guardians of the Galaxy and Deadpool. And then it kind of dropped and kind of floated in midair. And he had said that he wanted to talk to me in person in San Diego. Well, I don't go to San Diego anymore. It's too big for me. I can't navigate it. It's just too much. So then we talked afterwards. And he asked if I had any ideas for the Guardians or for Deadpool. I said I wouldn't do Deadpool without Rob, for one thing, which would be great fun to do something with him again. But I don't really have any interest in Deadpool. I think the movies are funny and all that, but I don't think I've read a Deadpool comic, maybe ever. And as far as the Guardians go, I had 3 ideas. So he put me in touch with an editor. Now, I didn't say it to him, but I said it to myself. This has to be fun. I don't need the money. I don't need the exposure. I don't need to do this. This would be a nice way to wrap things up. I wrapped up Normal Man. I wrapped up Shadowhawk. It would be nice to wrap up the Guardians, to put it to bed. So I had 3 ideas. And I turned those 3 ideas into this editor that he had assigned. I think it was 3 months later, I nudged the editor and said, look, hey, if you don't like anything, then let me know. If you don't like the pitch. Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. There were the 3 ideas, the 3 different pitches. One of them was, this was brought up by a reader back when I was working on the book. He had noticed that Yondu's god, Anthos, was an anagram for Thanos. There's a story there.
Yeah.
That was the one they chose. The other one was the Guardians coming back from 21st century and winding up in the wrong dimension. And in this dimension, Kang was putting together an army. A very young Kang was putting together an army. And it was rancors, lieutenants, and force. And when you put them together, they're the Legion of Superheroes. And nobody seemed to notice that. So that was one of the conceits, have them fight the Legion. And then the other one was just a ground up reboot, which I said was probably a little too much like DC for them, But I figure at this point, who cares? Do a ground up reboot. I said the science will be correct up to today, which it never was. I did my best while I worked on the book to make the science right. But if you read the original Guardian story, it's a very thinly disguised. At the end they sing "We shall overcome." So it wasn't really a science fiction story. It wasn't really a superhero story. It was an emancipation story, which was big at the time. But the science was just made my head hurt. It was so bad. Yeah. And I am an astronomy buff for real, so I know a lot of this shit. So I pitched that, and I pitched two what ifs. Again, something that I feel close to. One of them, the one they liked was what if the Hulk had stayed with the original Avengers? And the conceit there is, if you read Avengers #2, Iron Man and Thor are just being pricks to the Hulk. And the Hulk is really belligerent, but they're being jerks. And what happens is Jan steps in and stops them, makes them stop. And so Hulk immediately attaches to Jan. And eventually, throughout the course of the story, he becomes the Steve Gerber Hulk that thinks everybody is dumb, but he's very childlike, very, left to his own devices. And Jan, being as rich as she is, she buys a spread for the Hulk for him to just walk around in and not be bothered by anybody.
That's a cool idea.
Yeah, that's the way it ends. The other one was, what if Peter Parker had turned into a human spider? So think of it like Cronenberg's The Fly, where he just mutates and mutates and mutates throughout the whole entire story and becomes literally a monster. That did not have a happy ending.
No. I was just about to say, I was about to ask where that one would go.
Like when he changes, is it all around Aunt May and Uncle Ben then? Because he really didn't have like a love interest at that time.
Yeah. Is it around his family? No, it's around the kids at school. I mean, he's literally changing into a spider, and there's no way to hide it. Multiple eyes, hairy body, multiple limbs. I mean, he's literally turning. Think of The Fly. Think of that movie, and how over the course of the movie, he literally turned into a monster. Same thing. Okay, that would be so how would it end? They'd probably send him to Monster Island or something like that to be the best way to save him, without killing him. But he could no longer exist with people. It's not a happy story. Yeah. So one of my criteria was, I started saying earlier, was I didn't really need the gig, either one of them. They would have been nice, but I don't need them. So I decided I was not going to work with a young editor who thought he was going to bust the old man's chops. That just wasn't going to happen. The second it wasn't fun, I walk. And I don't care where the project is at, I would walk. So we settled on the first one, the Anthos Thanos one. And I sent in the plot. And 3 months later, I nudged the editor and said, look, if you don't like it, that's okay. You can tell me if I can fix it. And if not, we'll can it. But, let me know. He hadn't read it in 3 months' time.
What?
Wow.
And then things got a bit worse. You know, he started nudging me about a whole lot of different things, and his lack of enthusiasm for the project had seeped over to me.
Hmm.
And so I sent them a note. I thanked CB for thinking of me. And I just said, I'm out. I'm walking. This isn't a negotiation. I'm out of here. I would never treat someone working with Shadowline with the disrespect that I was shown.
Yeah. It's funny that you're bringing this up. I talk to a lot of pros. We have a lot of pros on the shows. I become great, like yourself, I become friends with, and we talk and things. And the biggest issue that I am hearing from, we'll call the big two, is editorial staff is a nightmare. And again, your personal experience. What I've heard is they're not fans of comics. They don't know the history of the comics. They don't know the history of the characters. So when you're pitching things to them, they don't fully understand, or they don't catch on the Easter eggs that the fans would be like, "Oh my God, they got that in there. I haven't seen that in, how many decades with the books, or this and that." So there's a huge gap, and just the fans aren't there that are editing the books.
Right.
The editors just, they're not, it's not like what it was, or they're taking the characters and it's like, well, we can't do that with them anymore, and there seems to definitely be a lack of respect too for creators like yourself. Like, if I was that editor, with what I know and what I've been a fan of, and someone's like, you're working with Jim Valentino, I would have to step out of my office. I'd probably go down the elevator, out the front door, go in my car, and scream for joy that I'm giving this opportunity. Because I mean, why would you even pass that up just for the fact of just saying, I'm working on a book with Jim Valentino? Like, that just shows you, though, where the editorial staff is going and the type of people that they're hiring.
Well, he did come back with some notes, and he had some good points.
Yeah.
I told him so. I said, okay, let me work with this. But things were, we talked about what if, and he said that right now they're doing what ifs in like 5 blocks. The same what if Miles Morales became Captain America? And I said, that's not a what if. That's an imaginary tale.
Correct.
And he's like, well, what's the difference? I go, well, what if begins at a point in history? That's where it begins. It cannot begin. So an imaginary tale is Lois Lane goes from an exploding Earth to Krypton, where she becomes Superwoman. That's an imaginary tale. Can't happen. Didn't happen. Would never happen. That's the difference between the two of them. He didn't. I don't think he knew. I don't think anybody ever pointed it out.
I'm not gonna lie. That's the first time I've ever had that pointed out as well. Like, that is, I guess I've never really understood that. Like, that is insane.
Well, because it picks
What
up
if-
at a
yeah, I
it
mean,
picks
it's-
up at a
it's
real
better than
point in
yeah,
the
there's a-
stories.
Fork in the road. Either this
Correct.
could happen, this could happen. I mean, I've just never thought about, like, like, what if, like, what if Lois Lane was Superman, or was from Krypton, and it's like, well, that could have never happened. So that's not a what if story. That's that's crazy.
Yeah, because if you're reading, so say you're reading Iron Man, right, and you're going through and you're getting your monthlies, then the what if comes out. That what if, may actually be picking up, let's say 10 issues back. So now
Right.
you know the actual story, but now they just threw a twist of what if, so and so in that story ended up becoming Iron Man, and how would that event have turned out? So it actually would pick up, which was always cool, which is what I liked about the what if comics.
Yeah, I did 10 what ifs,
Mhm.
and some of them I drew. Most all of them I wrote. I think only 2 of them I didn't write. But yeah, I would research, what was going on. I'd research the stories. A couple of them were assigned to me, and I, had to research stories I wasn't that thrilled with, but I did the job. because that was the job. But the thing is that, I hear the complaints too. I hear it from, which is one of the reasons a good friend of mine, Brian Haberlin, had just done something with Wills Portasio, another good friend of mine, at Marvel. And he said, and he didn't have a lot good to say about the editor. He thought the editor was just didn't get what was going on at all, and made arbitrary changes, which they used to do when I was at Marvel 30 years ago. But at least the editors knew what was going on. They knew their stuff. And I'm not saying that this guy didn't know his stuff. I'm just saying that his lack of enthusiasm for the project killed the project.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a
it's
shame.
insane.
I was when you told me about that a few months back, I was pretty excited for that. And I know, Rob on Robservations, had 2 great episodes recently, basically honoring you and what you did with Guardians of the Galaxy and whatnot. So I was really hoping that was going to happen. So, hearing now from you that that's not going to happen, I'm pretty disappointed because I have every issue of your Guardians of the Galaxy.
I'm
You
sorry.
know,
Right.
I like it. We've had this conversation
Yeah.
before. You apologize, but I
like
liked it. I didn't get I was young. The science made sense to me because I didn't know any better. But no, I thought it was going to be really cool if you got back on it. Because they do that. Marvel does it every now and then. Sometimes they'll throw Roy Thomas something. Or Jerry Conway gets something. They get these little bones handed.
What CB said to me was that they were having success bringing back legacy creators.
Yeah.
And they were having success with that. I'm not closing the door to Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll talk to CB, I'm sure, again. I hope there's no hard feelings there. I tried to make sure that there weren't.
Yeah.
But I'm willing to talk to them, but I'm not willing to work with an editor that thinks he's going to bust my chops. That's not going to happen.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. And it shouldn't be that way. There should be mutual respect for one another. Age set aside, right? Experience set aside. If you're both doing a task together, you respect each other and you work well with each other, and you should both be enthusiastic about the project. And if you're not, communicate, right? Like, or maybe find another editor that is more enthusiastic about this
Right.
project. Right.
At one point, he said to me, because we were talking about covers, first
Mhm.
issues versus second issues and stuff. And he said, I feel like I'm talking to a businessman. And I went, well, you kind of are,
I mean, does he just not know who you are? Like,
Well,
it's like he just doesn't.
and comic books are fun, right? Blevins, comic books are fun, entertaining.
I
but
mean-
when you make them, it's
I think his context was that, I don't know. So
I could have been.
we may have more in the future, and if things work out, would I work with Marvel again on something? Sure.
Nice.
I'd work with DC because boy, do they need help. The whole debacle with the Justice Society and the Legion has been in limbo for years and years. Just everything that they're doing is sort of like, what are you doing?
Yeah, that's the consensus for the most part. Besides the people working on the books,
Yeah, I mean, do they even have a big bad right now? I mean, do they even have like a big bad that they're all after, or is it just like
something's coming out?
like
Something is coming out, but everyone's a lot of the I guess assumptions people are having is that everyone's expecting kind of another rebirth, like a relaunch of things.
God, I mean, how many times are they going to rebirth into?
Well, you know what?
They're going to fight.
To that, Frank Miller came on Daredevil with no number one, no rebirth, no nothing, and he completely revitalized that book.
Yeah.
He turned it into an absolute winner just based on pure talent alone. And that's it. You don't need to restart every other year. You don't need to keep adding auxiliary characters that have no function.
Yeah.
And that's what they're, at least to me, to my eyes, that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
I think they're saying they're going to sell books because they're number ones. They're like, hey, look, we got 15 new number ones coming out this month. Make sure to get all the number ones in your pool box.
And Marvel does the same thing. And
Yeah.
it's like, no, guys, just make better stories.
Yeah. Well, that's why, my channel and what we do, I mean, I'm a huge advocate for indie comics because that's where I'm getting the best stories. They have full creative freedom. They can do what they want. Some of them do hire editors and stuff, but they're hiring people that are passionate about this.
They should. Hiring
Yeah.
editors can be a real boon to you.
Yes.
They can show you your blind sides. They can say, okay, this is pretty cool. Where are you going with it? I don't know. Let's think about that. Here are some options. Let's see what works. Editors can be extremely good for a book. Okay. Especially an independent book, because most indie creators, they may know how to draw and they may know how to write, but they don't know a whole lot else. And they need to be taught. They need to learn. And that goes for guys who are stepping away from Marvel and DC for the first time. Just like us, we had to become our own editors. We had to become our own advocates. We had to, we moved away from writing and drawing books to making companies. We had a learning curve. Our learning curve was under a microscope. And every time we did something wrong, boy, did we hear it. Luckily, creators today, they don't have that problem.
Well, with social media, they definitely they definitely hear it, except it's it's probably even worse.
I forget about social media because I have nothing to do with it. And my advice to them, to the guys who are the guys and the gals who are putting together their own stuff, God bless you. Don't listen to them. 1,000 years ago, when people actually wrote letters to one another, there was this guy that wrote a letter to me, and he said, we're getting all this criticism about our book and about our characters, and people hate it and blah, 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 but it's selling. He goes, how do you handle it? How do you handle the criticism? How do you handle when people, are just bloody mean to you? And this is for all the young creators coming up. Take this advice. I wrote him back and I said, people who like your work are persons of rare insight and intelligence. And people who don't are Neanderthals. And as long as you keep that in mind, you're good. The guy I wrote that to was Peter Laird.
Oh.
And look where that IP is at.
A couple years later, and I said, you win.
Yeah.
But the thing is this, don't listen to those people.
Yeah.
Don't listen to them. Even the ones who are encouraging you, who are doing, they're not doing you a favor either. Don't listen to them. Follow your own voice. If you have friends around you, talk to your friends, especially if they'll tell you where you're going wrong. That's a good friend. Mm-hmm. If you can hire an editor, because they're going to keep you on the right path. They're not just going to correct your dumb, spelling mistakes. They're going to guide you. Just don't, be like Robert Kirkman. Don't give up. Just keep, if something isn't working, throw it away. Try something else.
Yeah.
I see a lot of young creators right now that are really, really good. Really good. Nick Marakovich, is a great example. What a fabulous artist he is,
Dead Romans for those out there.
Yeah. But more than that, I just see them all over the place, getting published, publishing themselves. Um, uh, I'm sorry, names are escaping me right now, but there's a ton of them. And I think it's great. I think, I encourage them. I hope they continue. I hope they don't give up. And when you run across something that isn't working, regardless how dear it is to your heart, remember, kill your babies. Move on to the next thing. And you'll find your vehicle eventually.
Yeah. Hopefully. Yes.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully. But
Well,
strong words.
Yes, that was great advice.
I was lucky in that we had, back in the day, what we called small press or mini comics.
Mm-hmm.
And you were able to see your progression. And what I tell people today, especially if you're not published yet, draw your pages, put them away, pull them back out in about 3 to 6 months and take a look at them. And look at them with a jaundiced eye. Look at everything you're doing wrong. When my comics would come out, I would, well, first, Rob and I would always send one another in when we knew one of our comics were coming out, right? So if it was a Rob week, I would go in, grab a copy of it, walk past the cashier, it's for Rob, walk out. He would do the same for me. And then we'd sit in the car and scream and yell and bitch and complain about, what happened with the book. So when my books would come out, I'd get depressed. I'd put the book in the nightstand and look at it every single night. And my wife was like, "Why are you so depressed? This is what you want. What are you doing?" And I said to her, all I can see are the mistakes that I made. All I can see is everything that I reached for but didn't quite grasp. That's all I see. So that's what gets me depressed. And what keeps me going is that I want to get better.
Yeah.
And that's a good attitude to take.
Yeah.
You want to get better. You don't want to stay where you're at. If you're satisfied with what you're doing, you're never going to grow.
And that's the never give up factor, right?
Yeah, pretty much. It's a part. It's saying, yeah. I mean, you may suck no matter what. No matter what you do, you may be awful.
Mm-hmm.
You may not be the next Jim Lee or Frank Miller or whomever is exalted these days. But damn it, you don't have to be. You just need to be you.
And I have to say it, and that's what I love about indie comics. The style you see in their art, it's not perfect. Anatomy might not be perfect. Perspective may be slightly off, but it's their style, and yet it works. And, the dialogue in the book is good, and everything just works. And they become successful.
Interesting.
Because they believe in it, 100%.
Yeah.
Interesting ideas. Not the same, not, an ersatz Wolverine. Well, we've seen 5,000 of them. We don't need any more.
Yeah.
Give me an interesting idea, and again, it may not be something that appeals to me, but if it's interesting, that's enough, that's enough to go with. But I think a lot of people don't have a lot of ideas that unfortunately they just want to regurgitate what they've done before.
Yeah.
And that's no good.
No. So be creative, people.
Yeah. Just come up with,
I have so many ideas, but I think they're all dumb.
Yeah.
Oh, you do? You do?
Yeah.
Blevins?
I talk to you about my ideas all the time.
Well, you know what? Welcome to the club.
Yeah.
We were talking with Alan Moore once, and he said his greatest fear was that people would find out that he had no fucking idea what he was doing. I said, well, thanks, Alan.
Yeah.
So good.
Right.
Hey, some people just do it, you know, and that's it. And sometimes you don't know how to do it, you know. And I know with writing, right? I remember, you know, in college and stuff, they were like, "Oh, you should do the tutoring thing. You get paid this and that." And I told them, I said, I don't know what I'm doing. I just write." And they're like, "But it's perfect, you know, everything." I'm like, "But I don't know why. I just put things where I think they seem right or it sounds good to me, but I can't teach someone else that." You know?
They asked Truman Capote why he was so non-prolific, why he had only written a few books in his lifetime. And he said, some days I only write one word, but it's the perfect word.
Yeah.
I'm like, hard to argue with that.
I
The
know.
other thing is I just saw on, I think it was Jimmy Fallon's show, which I'm not a big fan of, but he had Keith Richards on. And the reason the Stones keep coming up is I'm going to go see them in May, and I'm very excited about that.
Oh, awesome. That's going to be fun.
But Keith just sat there in the chair with this guitar and did riff after riff after riff. All these, you know, within 2 notes, you recognized what song he was doing. And Fallon asked him how he did it. And he said, I don't know how I do it. I know I can do it, but I don't know how I do it. And that's, you know, that's kind of okay, you know?
Yeah. Sometimes it's best not to think how you do something, but if you do it well, just keep doing it.
Well, keep doing it and keep again, you know, look at your mistakes.
Yeah.
Look at your mistakes. Look at the things you didn't do right, you know?
Mhm.
And everybody thinks their ideas suck. And if you don't think your ideas suck, you're an idiot. Or else you're really, really good. One of the two.
Yeah. Well, Jim, thank you again for coming on. Thank
For
you for
sure.
sharing the story and setting the record straight and airing out, you know, airing out and sticking up for all the accomplishments that you did do and how hard you worked and the stuff you brought in. It's good to hear from you what you did, that you're defending what you did. And again, Jim, you know, I've told you a million times, you've been an inspiration to me. I respect what you do. And even the advice you give, you know, all the advice you've ever given me, I've taken and I've only seen success from it. And I really can't thank you enough for coming on and chatting with us about everything.
Absolutely.
The writing that was very, very hard for me.
Mhm.
It really was. And you should have seen the first draft.
A lot of red ink.
Yeah, there was. My son called me up and said, "You can't publish this. You just can't." And he was right. So, yeah, we toned it down an awful lot.
Yeah.
But it was still very, very hard for me to do. I find bragging and tooting your own horn to be very distasteful, and I still do.
I mean, you are a legend, though. I mean, like you've carved a space out. I mean, like you will not be forgotten. You know, I mean, like you have your spot clearly reserved forever. I mean, like it's great, and it's an honor to always get to be on here with you, man. Like for sure, it really is.
Mm-hmm.
I just wish that like back when I was younger, I was able to come to the shows to actually meet you in person and stuff, but that just never turned around. So
You're
but
turning
thank
this
you
one
again
into
for
a
coming on.
tearjerker now, Blevins. Jeez.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I mean, it's bittersweet for sure. Always, like, I mean, I just, I cherish having this opportunity. I mean, this is an opportunity that I never got to have as a kid. Someone who means a lot to me.
There's a lot to this that's better than those shows. You know, when you get to meet someone in person. But at the same time, you only get like a minute or two with them, or whatever, the book signing and that kind of thing, But you know, in my opinion, this seems a lot better because you can have an actual conversation with someone.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I agree.
Yes,
And that's
sir.
why we like doing it and bringing it on.
Yeah,
And
that's
when
what
we
I'm
go
saying.
live,
I'm very, very blessed to be able to be here. Thanks
Yeah.
to Scala and
Yeah.
Billy Tucci, and of course you.
Yeah, please tell Billy that I said the new She book looks great. Just looks
God,
great.
it's so
will
good.
do. Yeah. Yeah, we're getting it out to print soon. Very, very soon. I think next Monday, I think it officially goes.
Good,
Yeah.
good. It just looks fabulous.
Yeah.
So,
Well, thank you, Jim, again for coming on. And you're always welcome on the channel. I always bug you every now and then.
you have me every now and then, but
Yeah.
thanks, guys, and I'll talk
you.
to you later.
Hey everyone, thank you for joining us on Pop XP. If you haven't already, make sure to click that subscribe button and also click the bell for notifications when we go live and we upload some awesome new content. Also, don't forget to head on over to Twitter and follow us at the Pop XP and over on Instagram at the Pop XP. Thanks again everyone, and we'll see you soon.